Which of King Henry VIII's wives is your favorite? Who is the best Tudor queen? It's Catherine of Aragon, and you better listen up, hoes, because I'm only gonna lay it out for you this one time. Because I'm always gonna be a shooter for Miss Catalina in these streets. So welcome to the story of Catherine of Aragon. She was born December 16th, 1485, and was given the name Catalina at birth. She was the youngest and favorite daughter of her father, King Ferdinand II of Aragon, and her mother, Isabella I of Castile. Two extremely powerful Spanish monarchs that ruled their own kingdoms, and we're actually doing a full playlist on their family if you need to get caught up. And like her siblings, she would go on to receive a top-tier education, and education was something that she would value through her whole life. Catalina and all of the children were taught language, Latin, a lot of Catholic shit, that they were also taught arithmetic, law, history, philosophy, and the study of royal genealogy. And since her mother and father were two of the most powerful people in Europe, she always knew that her future was going to be mapped out by her parents. Oh, and her parents are the ones that ended a 700-year-long Reconquista in Spain, funded Christopher Columbus, and started the Spanish Inquisition. So they were not afraid of making big decisions. And actually, all four of their daughters became queens across Europe, including Catalina, who would start her marriage negotiations at just 3 years old. When she's a toddler, her parents try for negotiations with King Henry VII of England to marry her to their son, Arthur, the Prince of Wales. And the negotiations come together, fall apart, treaties are signed, treaties are broken many times, and eventually it does come to fruition when the pair are teenagers. And it's kind of working out for both parties, since Spain is looking to strengthen their alliances with countries outside of France, and England is really dealing with a lot of shit, since they really are getting imposter after imposter trying to claim their throne. England's just a goddamn mess, and since Catalina is a distant descendant from the Lancaster line, it would be a really good way to strengthen England's claim to the throne, marrying Princess Catalina to Arthur, Prince of Wales. And while all that's getting worked out, Catalina is just living her best life in Spain. She's traveling around with her siblings and her parents to new conquered lands, doing the whole thing. Until the fall of 1501, when she would set off to England and never return to Spain. And when she gets to England, they are fucking stoked. They are throwing rager after rager. They're celebrating that the princess is here. And Arthur and Catalina get officially in-person married, and she changes her name to Catherine to better represent her role as the English queen. And then they head off to Wales, so Arthur can work as the Prince of Wales. Though unfortunately, it would be a very short marriage for Catalina, and Arthur would pass away just 5 months into it. And whether or not they consummated that marriage is a debate still happening in my comment section to this day. During the marriage, both of them would contract the sweating sickness and become incredibly ill. Catherine, being the baddest bitch in the land, would survive the sweating sickness, but Arthur would croak, leaving her a widow at just 16 years old. So now she's no money, no family, 16 in the middle of Wales. Everything is crumbling in around her, and also everyone's speaking English, so it sucks. And her parents are on the continent like, hey, what the hell, King Henry VII? Why the fuck did your son die? And King Henry VII is like, well, shit. And Isabel and Fifi are like, dude, you got 2 sons, and if you want to keep this Anglo-Spanish alliance strong, you better figure your shit out. And so a marriage is arranged between King Henry VII's second son, King Henry VIII, and Catalina. The deal would be finalized in 1503, just a year before Catherine's mother dies. And her mother Isabella's death would set off some chaos in Spain, with her sister Juana taking the throne, and her father, Ferdinand, really fucking hating that. And it's vile and juicy, and if you want the tea on that story, stay tuned for the next video. But in this video, we're talking about Catherine of Aragon. And right now, she's over in England. They give her like this castle, they make her an ambassador for Spain, and they're like, hey girl, just wait it out until you can be the Queen of England one day, I guess. And the English monarchs are just fucking scammers to their core, so they do not hold up their end of the bargain in terms of providing for Catherine's house, and they pretty much leave her just like poor. And at one point, when the marriage negotiations were looking bleak, they just cut off her allowance altogether. Just real piss poor dirty dog shit. But soon, the tight wallet King Henry VII would die, and his son, King Henry VIII, would quickly marry the Spanish princess Catherine, and the two of them would take the throne. They had a joint coronation and threw the biggest party they possibly could, as she deserves. And the English people actually really like this, because King Henry VIII is young, handsome, athletic, and his father, King Henry VII, was kind of like a weird, depressed little troll in the dungeon that a lot of people just like didn't vibe with and thought was weird. So for England, King Henry VIII and Catalina, the daughter of the famous Catholic monarchs, was a great transition for them, at least optics-wise. And though this was a political union, it was also described as a love match. As much as King Henry tried to rewrite that history, they were in love. Do not argue me on that because you weren't there. But no, we do have writings at the time from the two of them that seem like they genuinely cared for each other a lot. And things are going great, because Catherine gets pregnant pretty much immediately, but unfortunately 7 months later would have a stillborn baby. But the next year, on New Year's Eve, ooh, she gives birth to a son. And England is stoked at the birth of this baby. The couple names him Henry, intending for him to become King Henry IX of England. This baby represents a lot of stability for the future of England, and everyone is excited. They're filling the fountains with wine, they're dancing in the streets. But unfortunately, baby Henry would die just 55 days later. And sadly, pregnancy and infant loss would plague the couple for years. And early in their marriage, in 1513, King Henry VIII kind of gets swindled into going to war with the French by Catherine's dad and the Pope. The Pope sending him wine and cheese and is like, hey man, saw you from across the pond, loved your vibe, would you mind going to war for us? And King Henry VIII is like, yes, I would love to. But he does very, very bad. And actually, Catherine's dad kind of like fucks around a lot during this battle, and he's like moving troops all over the place, and eventually the English are just like, dog, fuck this, and they pull out. But while all of that's going on the continent, back on the island, Scotland is BFFs with France. So they're like, hey England, why the fuck would you invade France? We're gonna invade you. And so the Scottish king invades England. But our girl, my queen, is in charge of England while Henry is away, and you are not going to invade her land. She might be a woman, and she might be pregnant, but she is still the daughter of Isabella and Ferdinand, and she's gonna fuck some Scottish shit up. And so she sends her boys to go slaughter the Scottish. And they do, including the Scottish king. It's wild. They're taking souvenirs back to give to King Henry. It's a whole thing. And then sadly, a few weeks later, she would have a stillborn birth of another son, with her struggle to be a mother continuing until she's 30 and successfully gives birth to baby Mary, who would grow up to be the first woman to rule England in her own right, Queen Mary I. But she would never have another child despite multiple pregnancies. And when it seemed clear that Catherine wasn't going to have another child, she really focused a lot of her attention to Mary and making sure that Mary had the finest education and preparedness to be queen. Since, as you remember, it was her sister Juana who inherited her mother's kingdom. It was her sister Juana who inherited her father's kingdom. It was her mother who ruled all of Castile. A woman ruling for Catalina was not something foreign. For the mouth breathers in England, however, it was not as accepted. So she was going to make it accepted. She was heavily supporting women's education and dropping fat stacks of cash on scholarships. And Catherine's not an idiot, so she knows that having a daughter means a powerful marriage can be arranged. And so she hits up her sister, Juana, and sees if she can betroth her daughter, Mary, to Juana's son, Charles V. And Charles is older and kind of a party boy and doesn't really care to get married right now, so he's like, okay, I guess I'll be engaged to this baby. But thankfully that didn't work out, and he ended up marrying his first cousin from his other aunt, which, don't worry, is coming up when we get to Habsburg Spain. So that falls through, and there's actually a ton of betrothals that are proposed for little Mary, including one with her half-brother, who is the illegitimate son of King Henry VIII, but thankfully that one did not happen. And speaking of other kids, Catherine hits menopause, and Henry realizes there's no chance of a male heir coming from Catherine. And he's got his eyes on Anne Boleyn, the old Lutheran sympathizer from the court. And so for 7 years, he drags Catherine through the mud, both in name and just in character, in front of the Pope and everyone, just to try to get a divorce from her, make her join a nunnery so he can marry someone else. Trying to use a Leviticus passage saying that because Catherine was previously married to his brother, that God was mad at them and not giving them a son. And the Pope is actually under siege by Catherine's nephew, so he's not going to help out Henry regardless. But he's also like, no, I marry people to dead siblings all the time and they have tons of sons, so you're a liar. And you don't even have to look that far, because that actually happened with Catalina's own siblings, Maria and Isabella. It's in the playlist if you missed it. Anyway, King Henry VIII ended up using the Protestant movement to grant himself a divorce, make himself the head of the English church, and put Catherine into exile. Henry wanted Catherine to declare their marriage completely illegitimate, call their daughter a bastard, and join the nunnery. And Catherine's like, suck my dick, you low-born trash, I am not doing any of that. And the people of England still love Catherine, and they fucking hate Henry's new wife, Anne, so Catherine's like, suck on that. Though it is unbelievably sad that Henry would not let Catherine's daughter Mary anywhere near her, even when she was dying. Henry was nothing but fucking cruel to her at the end. Like, she knew she was dying, and Henry would not let anyone go see her, and one of her friends just broke in and was like, no, fuck you, she's not dying alone, I'm going to see her. Because she was known to have a lot of really strong female friendships and be truly loved by the women around her, if not by her bitch-ass husband. And when she died from heart issues at age 50, King Henry wouldn't even allow their daughter Mary to go to her funeral. And bitch, if you want more of that story, I have like a 25-part playlist you can watch. All about what happens to King Henry, his wives, his children, it's all there. But in this playlist, we just made it Juana la Loca. So if you want the real tea, the shit that puts Tudor drama to shame, then I'll see you in the next one for Miss Juana la Loca.